Hi, Gyokko. Long time no see. Is that a brand new pot? It's beautiful.
Hello and welcome to another collab review video. This time around, I'll be looking at the long-awaited Demon Slayer collab, which arrived earlier than expected to the North American server. This is a 7 Magic Stone RAM with a total of 37 units in its lineup. Therefore, chasing for a specific mid-priority unit could get very pricey. As an example, my JP account rolled about 60 times, and I didn't see a single Yushiro or Isetsu, even though these are lower priority units with a 3.75 pull rate. So hopefully you have a lot of stones, because to assemble most of the strong teams from the collab, you will need to pull a lot. Not just because you'll be chasing some mid-priority units like Doma and Nezuko, but also because you're gonna need a lot of fodder to exchange for the new 9-star duos. And all of these, except for the BGM one, take almost everything from the REM as fodder. If you were here during the last 2 Demon Slayer runs, you might already have a lot of Demon Slayer fodder ready to exchange. Though unfortunately, these 4 units were removed from the REM, and because of that, you won't be able to use your Tamayos, Sabitos, Urodakis, or Enmus as fodder. One thing to note about this run is that apart from the $1 bundle, you will only be able to purchase the 2 BGM units. And unlike the Path Island bundles, all of these do not refresh at all. So if you often spend money buying these bundles to avoid rolling the REM with Demon Slayer, you will actually need to roll the REM. Notably, you can't buy the Badge Unit bundle, which happens to be a very strong leader that you might want at least 2 copies of, maybe even 3 to work with some Kafka teams if we ever get the Kaiju number 8 collab. And as usual, the Badge Unit will cost you around 100 stones each, so hopefully you have some stones saved up, because again, you will want to roll a lot in this collab. As one of the strongest leaders in the game, Doma is a REM-only unit. To perfect his teams, you will want to get the badge, some of the other 9-star duos, and some of the mid-priority units like Giyu and the MP unit to both use as a sub and to enhance the collab badge. Before looking into the REM units, let me first take a look at the farmable or metal exchangeable units. And please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. This collab has 2 descended dungeons, Hantengu and Musan. Hantengu is not required to meet any Sync Awakening requirements, but you might still want to get a copy and max scale it, as he could go in some very specific teams due to his active skill. This one gives you a 90% shield for the price of halving your HP. This basically translates to a 5x effective HP boost, which could be very useful on a Fortune cooldown. This could be useful in a dungeon like the Venus title, where you encounter a handful of huge hits scattered throughout the dungeon. The new Farmable Musan looks somewhat strong awakening-wise, but he doesn't really have a home at the moment. If you put 2 in a team, you could have a looping pierce effect and a 13.5 billion cap break for devil types, as long as you have a Dark Skyfall buff active. This type of buff is not new, but starting with this collab, we'll start seeing more units requiring certain buffs to fully activate their active skill, like Musan here, or to get an additional buff or effect. Even though Musan looks decent enough on paper, the main reason why you want to get him is to meet Sync Awakening requirements for these 5 units. So make sure to get at least 1 copy and max scale him if you'll be playing with any of these Demon Slayer REM units. Kagaya is exchangeable for 20 Rainbow Collab medals, and he looks a little more useless than Musan. I guess at the very least, this is a free unit with 2 Dungeon Boost Awakenings, so if you're lacking Camellas, you might actually get some use out of this unit. Just like with Musan, Kagaya will mainly be used as a Sync Awakening requirement for these 9 REM units, so make sure to farm those medals to get this and maybe the Warring Mask, which will cost you 5 Rainbow medals. This equip is not that special, but free is free, so I would still get it. By clearing certain quests, you can also get this unit and equip for free. The Tanjiro and Nezuko reward unit have the same active skill as the REM version, but worse stats, leader skill, and awakenings. Even so, you should definitely still get this unit, as they might be of some use creating an origin system with the copy of the REM version. The Yorichi Type 0 equip isn't technically free, since you are required to clear the Demon Slayer Colosseum with the REM unit as your leader. If you're desperate and short on fodder, definitely look into completing that quest before nuking all of your copies of Kotetsu, who might actually be of some use, since he is now a low cooldown cleric with decent utility. Though this unit is easily overshadowed by better clerics out there, like the MP unit, Kiriya Ubuyashiki. Obviously, this unit's active skill is not as low as Kotetsu's, but Kiriya is a non-transforming unit without an Evo active skill that gives you access to a looping 40% damage reduction shield. Like always, clerics with a looping shield active skill require some dungeon knowledge to optimally use their active skill, and Kiriya's 6-turn cooldown might make things a little more annoying. However, the 40% damage reduction shield might be worth the trouble. As an example, this unit is commonly used in Doma teams, even though that leader doesn't really make much use out of Kiriya's Hilo E's and L Awakenings. Obviously, Kiriya being a Demon Slayer unit will also mean that your team will benefit from running an all Demon Slayer team with the Demon Slayer badge. And this being the MP unit will also mean enhancing the badge once you obtain Kiriya. Even if you won't be running Demon Slayer teams or will be using the base unit, I might still look into purchasing this unit due to their unique equip, as this is the only one with an active skill that leader swaps and charges at the same time. Not to mention that this equip also sports a team HP to skill boost and a dungeon boost awakening. I actually haven't seen that many use cases for this equip, especially because a lot of teams don't bother leader swapping via equips nowadays. But again, since this is unique at the moment, I would definitely look into buying it in case this is ever useful. Due to that, I feel like you only need one copy of Kiriya at the very most. MP is precious nowadays due to every single collab and event having an MP unit, so you should be very careful with your MP usage. Check some of these upcoming MP units and see whether you want to save up for them before getting multiple copies of Kiriya. But again, I would only recommend one copy at most. And now onto the REM units. These two could be used to help fix boards. Both give roulettes, which can either help you override problematic ones given by enemies, or be an important source of orb generation. That mainly goes for Urogi, who gives you a looping roulette and time buff. Karako, on the other hand, only gives you a roulette for one turn, so you would only include Karako in a team to help counter debuffs every 4 turns. Both units can deal decent damage, but them being with attribute does not help their case, and therefore, these two might not be anyone's first choice. Aisetsu and Sekido can play the double absorption voider role in their respective teams, though in the case of Aisetsu, I doubt that he will get much use, as his effects only last for 1 turn, which is generally not ideal since you might need more than 1 turn to deal with enemies with absorption shields. It also doesn't help that water BDP teams lack a lot of support at the moment, so I don't foresee Aisetsu being a unit in high demand. On the other hand, Sekido's active skill does last for 2 turns, but this unit is basically pigeonholed to Tengen teams, as their active skill requires you to have 4 light and 4 fire orbs on the board. A 2-turn double void effect on a 4-turn cooldown is very decent coverage, but any team that would use Sekido now has access to Tanjiro and Tengen, who provides the same coverage, but also gives a long-lasting damage reduction effect and an HP buff. Tanjiro and Muzan are exchangeable 8-star units that can take GFEs or select Demon Slayer units as fodder, but neither of these would be my first choice. Returning players that rolled Tanjiro in the past can definitely use him to clear a good chunk of content, but if you're looking to tackle the latest endgame content, this unit won't be of much use, mainly due to his active skill that will require some other orb generator to get enough fire orbs on the board to match a BDP. The Evo might be of more use, as it can serve as a rebuffer and orb changer, but none of the fire meta teams want or have space for this unit. I could maybe see the argument being made for exchanging for one Muzan if you don't already have a copy, as this unit does sometimes see use in ranking dungeons. But if you already have a copy, I would stay away. Sure, after his latest buff, you can now make a system with 4 copies, but the setup is fairly inflexible and very weak. A Muzan system is pretty much relegated to swiping very easy dungeons due to the lack of firepower. You could pump out more damage if you choose the 10C plus Super Awakening, but then you will actually have to hit 10C with this swipe unit. That will be fairly easy since each Muzan brings 2 corps to the table, and I don't know about you, but I'd rather not sit through that many combo animations when swiping. If you have no swiping teams, then you may actually be tempted to get this unit. But before you do that, check if you have any blue Odins, as he will soon get an ordeal evolution that you will be able to system with 3 copies. That team will definitely be faster and a little bit more flexible. Kotetsu is a cleric with a short cooldown. 3 turns is great when you expect to face back-to-back, unmatchable, or a walking bind debuffs, though this cleric does not condense another strong effect into his active skill. So if you have a more developed box, you will most likely pass over this unit in favor of the clerics that can provide something more useful like an HP buff or a looping shield. As I mentioned before, by clearing the Demon Slayer Colosseum with this unit as your leader, you'll get this free equip, which I would argue is not that special, but this is technically free if you have Kotetsu, so make sure to grab it before the event is over or before you exchange away all of your Kotetsus. Haganesuka's base and first equip are very lackluster, but before exchanging him away, check out his new Evo. This one gives a looping time buff and a Rebellion cap break to your helper and leader. The Rebellion damage is a very significant number, and is obviously welcome on teams where your leaders do not cap break themselves, such as with Eyes or Butler Albrecht teams. Those two wood leaders will also greatly benefit from Haganesuka's L Awakenings to quickly recover from assist removals. But this unit doesn't have to be constrained to wood teams, as I've seen him being used from time to time with leaders such as Menut and Shalin. I would definitely keep at least one copy of this unit, as this cap break might enable some non-meta or weird teams. Nakime is a unit with an Evo active skill that first swaps your leader with your rightmost sub and then becomes a looping shield. She can help recover SS and also gives a few other buffs, but the most notable at the moment is the Dark Skyfall buff. Reincarnated Shinobu is maybe the most notable unit that can make use of that effect, so since that team doesn't really benefit from the leader sub effect, you could maybe find some other unit that gives you a Dark Skyfall along with better awakenings or a stronger shield, like this upcoming Gonho Collab unit that fits perfectly in a Dark PvP team. Broadly speaking, lead swappers are not in great demand at the moment, so even though Nakime's active skill is fairly unique, you might not have any use at all for her. Kaiju number 8 will bring a team that needs a Dark Skyfall buff, but unfortunately for Nakime, that collab will also bring another unit that gives a Dark Skyfall that better synergizes with that team. That being said, Nakime is fairly unique at the moment, so I would definitely keep at least one copy if you ever need a lead swapper that becomes a looping shield that also packs a lot of utility awakening. Keigako is an example of those units that have active skills with certain Skyfall requirements. This one-turn cooldown unit can serve as an orb generator, damage dealer, and auto healer, though at the moment you won't have much use for this unit. Light Skyfall teams will actually see some play once we get Niska from the Gonho collab. Those light and dark TPA teams usually run 2 Kaigakus as subs, and sometimes even as an asymmetrical pairing. So if you feel like that's a team you'll want to play with, make sure to keep this unit and not exchange him away. Fair warning, Niska is a BGM unit, and her teams are a little bit hard to assemble. Her main appeal is her 1.5x EX speed pre-transformation leader skill, and also being a Gonho collab unit. Those two facts means that Niska is a popular choice for forming the 1.2 billion Colosseum from the Gonho collab. So again, if you have any interest farming that and plan to spend resources getting Niska, make sure to get a few Keigaku copies. The Tengen squad is a cleric capable of dealing damage and also has high healing potential, though their 4 base heal OE awakenings might not cut it in super altitude dungeons. If you try to fix that by choosing the heal OE plus super awakening, then you'll be sacrificing either more stats or damage by not getting the all-stat super awakening or the 10C. And whatever you choose, this unit might be in an awkward spot, either damage or healing wise. Unfortunately for this unit, their active skill does not give a Kyberg effect so that you can actually use their damage multiplier. And also when it comes to light clerics, there is some tough competition. It will be really hard to justify running this unit over the Demon Slayer MP unit, Kiriya. This unit doesn't have any damage output, but the looping 40% damage reduction shield and 4 base L awakenings will provide a lot of value for light teams. But back to the Tengen squad. Their equip is unique at the moment, so this alone might make you exchange for it. The equip could help units like its base, who have a somewhat awkward mix of damage and heal OE awakenings. However, that's a very small pool of candidates. Due to this being a vanishing equip, the cooldown on the Fortune Haste is significantly lower than the usual 24-turn cooldown of other non-vanishing equips. This does mean that your team might not need to stack up that many skill boost awakenings, but if you have a well-developed box, that might not be an issue for you. If you're swimming in trade fodder, I would maybe pick this up, but if you're short on resources, then I wouldn't lose too much sleep over missing out on this unit. Inosuke is an old mid-rarity unit, and he's honestly not that special, except maybe on his second Evo. This form has seen some use in some specific endgame farming teams thanks to its 30% gravity and looping shield effects. As an example, take this Doma team that is able to quickly clear the upcoming Venus title. With another 30% gravity in the team, like Hades Dragon, you'll be able to bring enemies down to 50% HP, which is a very common value for super resolves. Also, Inosuke's equips are not that bad. If you have multiple copies from previous Demon Slayer runs and are debating using him as fodder, I would still keep at least 2 copies, as again, 2 30% gravities in a team could be very useful. Base Kanao has a looping active skill with niche applications. Recently, she has seen some use in Kafka swiping builds due to her looping plus 3 combo buff and attribute absorption void. Some other Kafka builds use units like Giyu second Evo, so if you don't get any Kanao copies, you might still have other options. Another very similar example will be Hestia once she gets buffed. These 2 units are very similar, but you will notice that Kanao also has a 2-turn delay, which with all of their other effects might be irreplaceable for certain builds. Kanao's new Evo is a looping roulette and cap breaker for dark units, though honestly 12 billion is not that impressive nowadays. Base Shinobu is a cleric that can also serve as a looping auto healer, so she might not be a bad option in dark PvP teams. Though this cleric doesn't have any utility, so depending on the team, you might want to use some other cleric with L's and maybe even Hiloi Awakenings if you don't expect that the 40% auto heal will be enough for some dungeons. Evo Shinobu's active skill has this coverage against absorptions, though her damage multiplier is a little on the low side, so you might actually want to go with some other unit that has a better damage output or even one that focuses more on utility. Her new Reincarnated Evo makes up a 2-unit system, and she can even work as a leader as long as you can activate a Dark Skyfall buff. That will be very important since Reincarnated Shinobu's leader skill doesn't provide any FUA, so just like with OG Korutobi, you will need to use Nail Orbs to deal with enemy resolves. Shinobu's new Evo doesn't give herself a cap rate buff, and the intended unit to fix that is Kanao's new Evo, but again, 12 billion isn't that impressive. With the Dark Skyfall active, Shinobu will give herself a really large targeted attack buff, so instead of using Kanao's Evo, you might want to go with Evo Haganezuka's looping 30 billion cap break instead, as Shinobu should be able to easily triple cap. Even if you don't see yourself using Kanao or Shinobu in their monster forms and are ready to exchange them away, I would think twice as their equips do have solid awakenings. They might not have the best active skills, but you could always put those on transforming units or those with long Evo active skills. Muichiro is last year's BGM unit, and he got a pretty decent buff this year, though unfortunately, his teams might struggle a lot in newer dungeons since nowadays you come to expect some sort of recovery boost from your leader skills. You would especially want that with Muichiro, since at times when you need to match PvPs, you'll be moving a lot of orbs, and all of that movement can be very deadly with thorns on the board. Muichiro's active skill will also only generate 2 heal orbs on 5x4 boards, and since the team doesn't really have the flexibility to include an auto healer, a large hit followed by a board shrink will be a death sentence if you don't have a unit ready to counter that debuff ASAP. You will already be devoting 3 slots to Muichiro's for orb generation, so your subs will have to condense various effects into their active skills to better deal with modern dungeons that love to throw around multiple mechanics and debuffs. One unit that condenses a lot of effects and would have helped out Muichiro teams is Metis, but as of now, she's a JP exclusive unit for the foreseeable future. At the end of the day, if you're not concerned with the latest and newest in-game content, then Muichiro is still a very strong leader capable of tackling a lot of content, but assembling his teams will be extremely difficult since again, this is a BGM unit. Muichiro's equip is still one of the best 10C equips out there with its bulk awakenings and haste active skill, but I honestly don't think that this is worth the $30. He was everyone's chase last year, but for this rerun, I feel like Muichiro is completely skippable. Akaza teams often have 3 copies of him, with one of them taking the form of his new evolution. The base plays a crucial role as the rainbow board maker, though you will notice that he only gives you a set number of orbs. That means that unlike other units, like Main Ideal, who change your whole board to a random assortment, Akaza teams might actually want to carry Jammer and Poison Resist, since the resulting board after Akaza's active skill might leave a lot of hazards. Bombs might be especially dangerous, because if you can't match them away, it could be possible that you won't be able to match the 4 attributes needed to proc Akaza's damage reduction. Another issue with the team is that you might struggle when it comes to stacking skill boost awakenings, as base Akaza does not bring any to the table. Akaza's new Evo gives a looping pierce effect as long as you match Rainbow every single turn. With this effect on hand, your subs will not need to run pierce latents as old Rainbow teams used to do back in the day. This way, your orb generators can be free to stack more than 2 skill delay resist latents so that you can activate your leader skill damage reductions. Evo Akaza's active skill will also give you a much needed recovery boost to override recovery debuffs or with torn damage. You'll also get access to a 30% parts gravity every 5 turns, but this is an effect you can simply ignore on an Akaza team since it'll be really hard to stack enough Part Break Awakenings to guarantee that those drop. I would definitely avoid chasing Akaza as their teams have a lot of issues that are hard to ignore. Plus, if you have assembled a made ideal team already, I don't see the benefit in assembling an Akaza team since this one doesn't offer anything new apart from a slightly higher damage output. The Tengen team should look very familiar to those that played with it last year. Mitsuri still serves as the best asymmetrical pairing to Tengen as her leader skill synergizes very well and also gives you 12 seconds of fixed move time. Mitsuri's active skill gives you a looping shield and a special roulette for 1 turn. That roulette can be useful to override problematic roulettes given by enemies, but since this is a looping shield that you will most likely be popping every time it's up, you probably won't be able to afford saving the skill to deal with annoying roulettes, especially in endgame content where you most likely will need the shield to survive. The same goes for Mitsuri's parts gravity. You probably won't be able to properly time it to get the most value out of it when the parts are at full HP. Though since Mitsuri's active skill is on a 4-turn cooldown, you won't have to wait that long to be able to apply these effects. Tengen on the other hand plays the orb generation and cap breaking role. You will want 2 of him in a team so that you can get an activatable board every turn. That is, as long as the enemy doesn't give you a full fire or full light board. Those will be an issue since Tengen is not able to override orbs. In those cases, Mitsuri's roulette can be a lifesaver, but you will basically need to know the dungeon well to be able to plan for this. Again, this team hasn't drastically changed since its introduction. The only notable things that change is the fact that Mitsuri and Tengen now have Part Break Awakenings, but unfortunately, these might not do a well enough job farming parts, as neither Tengen or Mitsuri's leader skill increase the drop rate of parts. So for some dungeons, you will need to stack a total of 10 Part Break Awakenings, which depending on your box, might not be the easiest thing to do. The Zenitsu team is accessible if you have already rolled in the past Demon Slayer runs, as you will most likely have Zenitsu copies and will only need to obtain a few other units via exchange or via MP purchase. Zenitsu Inosuke is a new exchangeable 9-star that requires 10 collab units. Their first stage Evo active skill provides a long-lasting HP buff, which will be useful for adding bulk, but this can be easily overridden by enemy HP debuffs. Enemies could also void your buffs, especially in newer dungeons, so if you're tackling those, you definitely need to bring a unit along that gives you an HP buff. Otherwise, the 20 turns of 1.5x HP might be all the bulk that you need. With 2 copies of this duo, you'll have an orb generation system and a looping 23 villain cap break with their second stage Evo active skill. So including 2 of these units in a team is not only essential for the orb gen, but will also vastly improve your damage output. This duo can serve as a leader, though the leader skill is a little too demanding, as it requires you to activate a hard throw and a TPA. Using the heal orbs from the orb gen to match a hard throw means that you will be missing out on at least 1 heal TPA match, which in turn means that you might not be able to heal enough in some dungeons. Zenitsu and Inosuke's equip can help the base reach their 23 villain cap break in super altitude dungeons, and this equip also takes care of changing their wood sub-attribute to light. So if you're planning to play any teams that include this duo, you might even want more than the needed 2 copies to create the system. There are not that many levitate and light sub-attribute equips out there, so even though the lack of bulk awakenings is a concern, we don't really have that many options. Unless you really want to play this light TPA team, I feel like you can pass on this exchange. Base Zenitsu, once transformed, provides a looping Skyfall buff on a 2-turn cooldown, but the only unit that cares about this buff at the moment is Kaigaku. You could try to make a team centered around that gimmick, but whatever you make will soon be overshadowed by Niska from Gunho Collab, and those teams already have a unit that handles the light Skyfall buff, so they have no need at all for base Zenitsu. Zenitsu's first Evo can be an option as an attribute and damage absorption voider for light PvP teams, which are not really a thing at the moment, so you also probably won't have much use for this form. Reincarnated Zenitsu, on the other hand, is a very solid piercer that can be a leader or used in a Tengen team. This unit's leader skill is a little bit more forgiving than the Zenitsu and Inosuke duo, so this unit is usually the leader of choice when it comes to light TPA teams, at least for now. Although the duo has a higher effective HP than this new Evo, 81% damage reduction is still viable in any game content, especially if you include the MP unit, Kiriya, who grants a looping 40% damage reduction shield. Another reason to run Reincarnated Zenitsu as a leader is his 2x recovery boost from his leader skill. This will definitely help you deal with super altitude and thorn damage. His active skill also makes him a good damage dealer with decent pierce uptime, and the skill will help you quickly recover from any board shrink debuffs. The board expansion can also help against full heal or light boards, as Zenitsu and Inosuke's active skill does not override orbs. So with those extra orbs from the board expansion, you should be able to at least activate a TPA match to proc Reincarnated Zenitsu's leader skill. The issue with this unit is that Zenitsu is a mid-rarity unit, but you might already have a copy from previous runs. Even though the team looks fairly accessible, I would try not to spend that many resources here, since the fodder used to exchange for the duos could be better used to complete and perfect stronger and better team. Zohakuten is used very similarly as made ideal in this team that includes 2 Bar Alexanders, though using Zohakuten as a leader presents an annoying issue. You will need to use a devil type equips to most of your team members, as Zohakuten's leader skill gives a 5x boost only to devil types. If you manage to fulfill the conditions, you will gain a slightly higher damage output than the team with Made Ideal, since Zohakuten's cap break lasts for 2 turns, unlike Made Ideals that only last for 1 turn. This Demon Slayer unit will also give you more coverage against damage void and damage absorption shields. The bad news is that all of these benefits come at the expense of the insanely high recovery boost that you will get by dealing with Made Ideal. Though if you have all of the units on the team, apart from Zohakuten, you can give the team a try if you can find a Zohakuten friend. But I don't know about you, I feel like the Made Ideal version is a more comfortable team, since again, her recovery boost saves you a lot of headaches in some of the newest dungeons. Plus Zohakuten's double type restriction will severely limit your team flexibility. Yushiro is an older, low rarity unit that got a new cleric evo that could be used in this dark combo team. With only 4 heal OEs, you would not expect him to heal all that much, but by leading with Obanai, you'll have a 9x recovery boost, so Yushiro's healing potential should be more than enough in these teams. You would also expect to see this new Yushiro Evo form see some use in Sanemi teams due to his attributes, but unfortunately, that leader wants attacker type subs. Even if you fix that issue with an equip, Yushiro will still be lacking in the healing department with only 4 heal OEs, since unfortunately, the Sanemi team doesn't come with a significant recovery boost from any of the leaders. At the moment, we don't have any good attacker type equips that can significantly boost Yushiro's healing with heal OE awakenings. Those Sanemi teams are better off running Evo Nezuko, who already happens to be attacker type and has 2 more heal OEs. But back to Obanai teams. Genya can be a decent option for these dark combo teams as an attribute and damage absorption voider, especially if you want to increase your team's damage output. Though since Obanai's active skill already handles attribute absorptions, you could replace Genya with a unit that only deals with damage absorption shields, so think of someone like Kiriya. The team could even condense the cleric and damage absorption role with Evo Nezuko, that is, if 1 turn of damage absorption is enough for a dungeon. Though generally, you would rather have 2 turns of absorption voiding effects, so you might still want to include Genya even if you swap Yushiro with Evo Nezuko. Genya will also give a looping recovery buff and a looping special roulette, which honestly might not matter that much in Obanai teams, since again, the leaders will give you an insane recovery boost. And when it comes to the roulette, this will only be good to override problematic ones, since Daki and Obanai boards should provide you with more than enough Dark Orbs. I guess on Daki turns, with the 5x4 board, the roulette might come in handy in case Daki's active skill fails to generate enough Dark Orbs for 2 dark combos. Overall, Genya can definitely be a decent sub for this team. Daki got a great buff to her active skill, since the system of her will now grant you a looping 50% shield. Not to mention that she also has a workable 13 billion cap break to devil types, which should work fine for endgame content, at least for now. Obanai is not devil type, so you will need to address that issue via an equip so that he can get Daki's cap break. Daki's active skill will also give you a random assortment of wood, dark, and heal orbs, which on a 7x6 board should provide enough dark combo matches for your damage dealers to fully triple cap. I do bring up 7x6 boards because, as we'll see, an Obanai system will give you an expanded board at all times if he's not interrupted. The Gyotaro Evo is a little unimpressive, especially since he is mainly a wood unit. If you're going to use a double absorption voider that lasts for 2 turns on this team, I would rather go with Genya, since on Obanai turns, you will only generate Dark Orbs to deal damage, and at least with Genya, you're able to change his wood sub-attribute. Daki's belt is still an amazing equip to this day, as it has a lot of bulk and utility. Even if you don't care about running her as a unit because maybe you only have one copy and are very short on exchange fodder, I would still think twice about exchanging her away, since her equip can definitely help a lot of teams. When entering dungeons with 2 Obanai leaders, you'll get a 1.69 rank XP boost, which is obviously not as impressive as running 1 regular or bartender Selene as a leader. But with Obanai, you'll be able to tackle endgame content that cannot be cheese or doesn't allow leader swapping. A common use for this leader in JP was the 1.2 billion Colosseum from the Gung-Ho collab, which should return to NA very soon. The theme for that dungeon will look a little different from the one that I am showing, since Yushiro and Genya are usually replaced by Gung-Ho collab units. Not because those units are better subs, because everything in that Colosseum hits like a truck, and your team will most likely need the 5x stat boost that Gung-Ho collab units get in that dungeon. But back to the general Obanai team. His post-transformation leader skill also gives a 3x recovery boost, so with 2 leaders, you'll have a 9x boost, which does seem like overkill, but this will be sorely needed in super altitude dungeons since Obanai's active skill will generate a lot of poison orbs. It will be almost impossible to not match any poison combos in the 7x6 board that he'll give you, so again, that insane recovery boost will be necessary to make this leader viable in endgame content. On top of those effects, you'll also get 100% uptime on Pierce and attribute absorption void effects. If you didn't have these counters to common enough mechanics, this theme wouldn't be all that good, since you are essentially devoting 4 units to an orb chain system. At least with this setup, and by alternating Obanai and Daki's active skills, you'll be covering the looping shield, piercer, and attribute absorption voiding roles. The most popular dark combo leader at the moment is Rosetta, so it's hard to not think about her when talking about this team. She is a much stronger leader that excels at part breaking, and her whole team can have a higher damage output. So why would you use Obanai if you have the optimal Rosetta team? The answer comes back to Obanai's EXP boosting leader skill. But if you have Rosetta or any other meta leader and don't care about farming XP, then I wouldn't lose sleep missing out on Obanai. These teams will be hard to assemble since all of the team members here are REM only units. So even if you do care about farming XP, even chasing for the core members, Daki and Obanai, can set you back a lot of stone. This wood combo team will also be hard to assemble as only 1 unit in the team is exchangeable. Obanai can be used in the team too, and his active skill complements the team very well since he will cover the attribute absorption voiding role. Plus his Pierce effect will also be helpful since Sanemi only gives you 50% uptime on that effect. You can get Gyomei for 5 select collab units or GFEs. He serves as a looping shield, and he also provides a roulette and a 60 billion cap break for himself for 1 turn. For the latest Emigan dungeons, you will have to reapply the shield ASAP since everything hits so hard. Therefore, you might not get to optimally use his other active skill effects. That more so goes for his impressive cap break, as you might need to reapply your shield on the same turn that you use your looping cap breaker, Sanemi, whose 14 billion cap break lasts for 4 turns. In that case, Gyomei will go without a cap break effect for 3 turns if you decide to activate him after Sanemi. If you compare the damage output, you will still be ahead when using Gyomei second, but I just find this overlap a bit awkward. I wish Gyomei had a lower cooldown and no crazy cap break, because 6 turns to reapply a looping shield is a little on the long side, so it will be annoying to deal with enemies that void your buffs. Overall, Gyomei is a strong unit for Sanemi and other wood teams. His 2 power break awakenings are helpful since a Sanemi team would need to stack 8 of those awakenings across the whole team if the parts drop rate is 0%, and with Sanemi and Gyomei, you're more than halfway there. If you're planning to assemble the Sanemi team, you only need 1 copy of this unit as the equip doesn't seem that useful. It could help non-attackers comply with Sanemi's leader skill, but the lack of effective skill boost and unimpressive active skill doesn't seem worth the fodder. So again, I would only get 1 copy if you already have a Sanemi or wood team that will benefit from having this unit. Sanemi and Obanai is the new BGM unit that you can purchase for $30. This is the usual asymmetrical pairing for Sanemi, and these teams will need 2 copies of the BGM to have a system that gives orb generation, targeted attack and move time buffs, a damage absorption void effect, and a 20% gravity on parts every single turn. This duo does not override orbs, so if an enemy turns your whole board into wood, dark, or heal orbs, you won't be able to activate both the duo's and Sanemi's leader skill damage reduction. Obanai does provide a whole board change to help counter that, but he's only available every 4 turns. And even though the chances are slim, Obanai's board could generate too many dark or heal orbs that might then not allow the duo to generate the 6 needed wood orbs. Gyomei does provide a roulette that you could use to fish out wood orbs, but it'll be difficult to time his active skill due to his 6-turn cooldown. This unit's equip is decent due to the haste active skill and mix of awakenings, but it's too bad that this doesn't have any team HPs. Maybe if it had a single team HP awakening, I could see this equip alone be worth the $30, but as it stands, I don't really see much upside in buying the bundle unless you already have most of the Sanemi team assembled and are itching to play it. Bat Island is still ongoing, and even though it doesn't have a haste active skill, I would rather spend the $30 on Chahil and Madu's bundle since I think that this equip's awakenings are way better. Sanemi is the new orb skin unit who has a 2.5% pull rate, which is slightly higher than the usual 2% for orb skins, but for some reason, there's no orb skin bundle for sale. He's a great parts farming leader due to his pre-transformation leader skill. And even though the asymmetrical pairing, the BGM duo, doesn't boost that rate, the team can easily stack enough Power Break Awakenings. As I mentioned, the team needs 8 Power Break Awakenings if we assume a 0% base drop rate. And with both Sanemi and Gyomei, the team already has 5 Power Break Awakenings. Sanemi teams also have access to a 20% gravity on parts every turn, so killing the parts before the main body is almost a guarantee. Post-transformation, Sanemi provides a team-wide looping 14 billion cap break and gives a pierce effect that lasts for 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown. He also destroys the shield, which is an effect that's becoming a little bit rare on some of the newer meta leaders. Sanemi's leader skill damage reduction depends on activating an awakening, so you will need to clear Awoken Binds ASAP. But since the general team only has 1 out, 2 Awoken Binds, there might be times where you'll need to stall for Ibu Nezuko. At the very least, stalling shouldn't be that hard since your cap breaker and orb generation effects are separated. Even if you're not interested in Sanemi teams, his equip might entice you to roll as it provides a great mix of effective skill boost, damage, bulk, and utility awakenings. Surprisingly, there's not that many attacker type equips out there, though apart from Sanemi, no other meta leader requires attacker types, at least for now. If that changes, you will definitely want this equip in your monster box. But again, the unfortunate part is that you can only obtain this new orb skin unit from the REM. The usual fire BDP team looks a little like this, and most notably, 5 out of the 6 members are exchangeable, so this team is very accessible as long as you have the fodder to spare. Transforming Nezuko is a short cooldown cleric that gives a looping recovery and auto heal effects. Unfortunately, the latter is only for 20%, which might not be all that significant in new dungeons that will definitely require more healing. The RCB boost might also not be all that consequential, since clerics are usually the ones with heal OEs, and unless you'll be including some other unit in the team with those awakenings, transforming Nezuko's recovery boost will barely make a dent in super altitude dungeons or against thorns. Her Evo is a more popular cleric option due to having a great mix of utility and damage awakenings. Evo Nezuko's active skill can also handle HP debuffs and damage absorption shields. Usually the Tanjiro and Nezuko team already gets a looping HP buff from running 2 Tanjiros and Tengens in the team, but that duo's buff is only for 1.5x HP, which might not be enough to tank some hits. With that setup, you also have 100% uptime countering attribute and damage absorption shields. So even though Nezuko's damage absorption voiding effect won't be of much use, at least the 2x HP buff will give a more significant boost to your bulk. And again, even though Evo Nezuko is off color, this unit is the cleric of choice for Sanemi teams since the typical setup does not have an out to HP debuff. The only bad part when it comes to this unit is that Nezuko is REM only, and if you never roll in Demon Slayer before, you might face some issues getting this unit. Rengoku is an exchangeable 8-star unit that takes GFEs or select collab units as fodder. Those that never got this unit from previous runs might want to get this unit if you have any interest in playing Tanjiro and Nezuko teams. This unit grants a Fire Skyfall buff that is needed to activate one aspect of Tanjiro and Nezuko's active skill. With the Fire Skyfall enabled, that duo unit will be able to change enemies to fire attribute, which basically means that you'll neutralize any attribute advantages and disadvantages. Since Rengoku is on a 2-turn cooldown, you will be able to quickly reapply this buff, which might speed things along in a dungeon like GA2 where you face off against multiple water enemies. And there's also at least 2 times throughout the dungeon where enemies will override your Fire Skyfall buff. Rengoku also gives you a looping +2 combo buff, which will allow Tanjiro and Nezuko teams to easily hit 10C by simply matching the fire and heal row generated by their active skill. Rengoku will also generate 9 fire orbs, which basically guarantees a BDP match. Rengoku's first Evo does see some use from time to time as a leader for the Plus Limit Breakthrough Colosseum. This is the usual setup, and the reason why this is run as a leader is the 5 bonus combos that you get from his leader skill. With that, and when paired with Tanjiro and Nezuko, matching that unit's fire and heal rows will give you exactly 10C without needing a combo buff. His last Evo and equips are a little unimpressive nowadays, though if you lack box diversity, Rengoku's Haori is not a bad 3 team HP and 2 skill boost equip. Overall, if you care for Tanjiro and Nezuko teams, I would definitely look into getting a copy of Rengoku. However, if you're not in a rush to play with Tanjiro and Nezuko, you could skip the Rengoku exchange, as this unit won't be needed in that stronger and easier to pilot team. You could maybe put the Rengoku fodder towards your second or third copy of Tanjiro and Nezuko to eventually use with Kafka. Tanjiro and Tengen is exchangeable for 10 collab units. This duo is the answer to attribute and damage absorption shields on Tanjiro and Nezuko and Tengen team. Its first stage Evo active skill provides a long-lasting Fire Orb Skyfall and a 30% damage reduction shield. Both of these effects can be interrupted or voided by certain enemies. Tengen teams won't really miss those, since the typical setup with Mitsuri can reapply a slightly larger looping shield, and the Fire Skyfall buff is largely inconsequential in these teams. Losing Tanjiro and Tengen's Skyfall buff also shouldn't matter much in Tanjiro and Nezuko teams, since you'll be able to quickly reapply those with Rengoku, though losing the shield effect will be more palpable since the typical Tanjiro and Nezuko team does not have space for a looping shield. Thankfully, with 2 copies of this duo, you can loop Tanjiro and Tengen's second stage active skill, which gives you access to a 1.5 HP buff, and hopefully this should provide enough bulk to tank all hits throughout the dungeon. And if that's not the case, maybe you'll need to use Nezuko's 2x HP buff. Do be careful timing those 2 units, because you might be left with no HP buffs. This duo will also change your whole board to fire, light, and heal orbs. Along with Rengoku in the team, you will hopefully always have enough fire orbs on the board to match a BDP. There is one small issue with this active skill though. It doesn't remove locks. This might not be a big problem, but there is one scenario where not removing locks might mean certain death. If an enemy shrinks your board and then locks it, and there's not a single fire orb in the middle of the board, then you won't have the 6 needed fire orbs to activate Tanjiro and Nezuko's leader skill damage reduction. I do think that this is a very unlikely scenario, but it's something to keep in mind. To be on the safe side, on the turn before you use Tanjiro and Tengen, try to save at least 1 fire orb within the 5x4 bounds. This duo's equip is not that impressive, so I don't think that this alone is worth the exchange. If you care for Tanjiro and Nezuko teams, then you definitely want to get 2 copies of this unit so that you can loop your effects. Tanjiro and Nezuko is the badge unit of the collab, and you can therefore exchange for it with 14 Demon Slayer units. This duo makes up a 2-unit system that handles orb generation with the first stage active skill and raises their own damage cap with the second stage. This type of system is similar to Menot and Shaolin, as you'll want one unit ready to use the second stage active skill when the other one is ready to use the first stage. You will notice that this unit does not generate enough orbs for a BDP match, but like I mentioned before, Rengoku and Tanjiro and Tengen will aid by providing more orbs if you properly cycle your units. And thanks to those units' Fire Skyfall buffs, you'll also be able to change enemies to Fire attribute every turn, which comes in handy when dealing with tanky water enemies. Fair warning, the enemies will return to the attribute that they were before you change them right before they attack, so don't get any cheesy ideas and start stacking Fire Resist Latents or Awakenings. To reach this duo's full damage multiplier, you will want to match BDPs, but once we get Kafka from Kaiju number 8, this duo will not need to match that shape to hit their 50 billion damage cap. That's mainly thanks to Kafka's 300x damage multiplier on his leader skill. I'll expand more on that later if NA ever confirms that we'll get that collab, but for now, just know that that leader, with 2 Tanjiro and Nezuko's as subs, can easily swipe through some of the newest endgame dungeons fairly quickly while also being able to break all of the part. Like always, we won't know if this new collab will come to our server, but if you want to be prepared and want to farm those endgame dungeons, then make sure to get 2 Tanjiros and Nezuko's. Some builds even include 3 copies total of this duo in a team by including the equip, though I don't think that this equip is a hard requirement for those farming builds, so 2 copies of this unit should be more than plenty. Again, this unit will grant you the collab badge once you obtain them, so even if you don't care for these units or Kafka's teams, you will still want to get a copy if you have any interest in any team with multiple Demon Slayer units. For some weird reason, this badge units bundle is not for sale, so the only way to obtain it will be by rolling it or by exchanging it. Now onto the strongest team of the REM, which some also consider to be the strongest team in PAT at the moment. This team is a little harder to assemble than the rest, since the leader itself, Doma, and 2 other strong subs are REM-only units. Thankfully, if you rolled before, you might already have copies of Giyu or Gyokko. Gyokko has received great buffs that make him a good damage dealer and utility sub. Post-transformation, Gyokko can deal up to 75 billion damage every turn with his looping active skill. This skill also has a very important effect for Doma teams, the looping Water Orb Skyfall. Gyokko's Skyfall buff allows Doma teams to get access to a 50% auto-heal effect. At the moment, he's the best unit with this type of active skill, so those who fail to get this REM-only unit won't have the easiest time in dungeons to avoid buffs or override the Skyfall effects. Thankfully, in the near future, the Gonho Collab will bring an exchangeable replacement, Laufey. That Gonho Collab unit does bring a more useful active skill to the table that can help tackle void damage shields for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown, though overall, she will deal less damage than Gyokko since her cap break effect does not loop. But until the Gonho Collab returns, to play Doma teams for the next couple of weeks, you'll really want to get Gyokko, especially because he also usually helps recovering assist. Gyokko's equip will also be extremely helpful for most teams. Even without its new 7C plus awakening, this equip would still probably see some use in this day and age due to its other awakenings and active skill. Your monster box will definitely benefit from having this unit, but again, the bad news is that he can only be obtained via the REM. Giyu is another previously introduced unit that has also received amazing buffs. Those came in the form of a new reincarnated Evo, but even his 2 previous forms may be of some use in this day and age. The base form is a low cooldown cleric, which will be useful for handling back-to-back unmatchable and awoken bind debuffs. On top of that effect, which will definitely help new leaders that need to activate awakenings for their leader skills, Giyu will also generate 10 water orbs that you could use to match a BDP and enable him to do damage. Therefore, he is not a bad cleric option for water BDP teams, though unfortunately, these don't have much support at the moment. His second Evo packs a lot of effects into his looping active skill, but its cooldown might be a deal breaker. His effects can easily be interrupted, though that mainly goes for the HP buff, since that can be overridden by HP debuffs, unlike minus combos. This type of active skill sees some use in some farming builds, like in a Tanjiro and Nezuko team that can easily hit 12C by swiping the provided fire and heal rows from those leaders. This Kafka team builds on that concept since it uses Tanjiro and Nezuko as the origin engine, and as you can see, this team can quickly and easily clear Jupiter by mostly swiping. Giyu is not the only option when it comes to a looping combo buff, as again, Kanao has a similar active skill that will enable you to at least hit 11 combos, which is exactly what you want when leading Kafka. Giyu's new reincarnation Evo steals the show though, as this form is a staple in Doma teams, though honestly, he could go elsewhere as his stats and low cooldown active skill are great in general. There are even some Doma builds out there that use 3 Giyus and forgo running most utilities and other common roles. If there are any mechanics the team cannot handle, then the team has no trouble stalling those out, even awoken binds. To stall them, you basically take advantage of the looping HP buff that you get from 3 Giyus and Doma's auto heal effects. These builds are more so for EX challenges, where enemies don't usually have any execute timers, but do require a lot of bulk. This setup won't work all the time, as in most non-EX challenge dungeons, enemies will execute you whenever the absorptions or awoken bounds run out. Giyu is definitely a unit you want to keep all of your copies, as he is very useful in Doma teams, so when exchanging, maybe try to keep a few copies. Muichiro and Mitsuri is a new duo unit that is meant to be used as the looping shield for a Doma team, but this unit is usually the weakest link and is often dropped in favor of other looping shields like the MP unit, who also serves as a cleric. Apart from the looping shield, this duo can deal with damage void shields and will also give you access to a part's gravity, but these 2 effects are something Doma teams can cover elsewhere or simply forgo. Unlike Kiriya, Muichiro and Mitsuri do have the benefit of having an actual damage multiplier, but unfortunately, since this duo does not break their own damage cap, using them in a team won't drastically increase your damage output. I guess you could put the DDC latent on them to deal more damage, but you might get more value out of the skill boost plus latent since this duo does have a hard L awakening. On the other hand, the duo's equip is simply amazing. This is the first non-bundle Levitate equip with 2 team HPs and a haste active skill, and it even provides some OE coverage. So even if you see no use for the base, I would still try to get a copy. This duo, on the other hand, is a staple in Doma teams as the answer to attribute and damage absorption. Their Evo active skill will be a bit annoying if you face off against the other absorption shield, but since the cooldown is very low, this shouldn't be too much of an issue. To maximize your damage output, you will want to loop this unit whenever you can, as their active skill also gives you access to a looping 23 billion cap break. The board change effects won't be all that useful in Doma teams, since even if your board gets flooded with water orbs, matching a water blob will still proc that unit's leader skill. Giyu and Tanjiro's equip is solid awakening-wise, but this is something you'll mainly use in water teams due to the water sub-attribute awakening. And since Doma is a water leader, it's not all that uncommon to also see this equip in those teams. Even though this equip isn't as impressive as the last duos, this exchange should be a higher priority than the last if you plan to play Doma teams. Doma is considered the strongest leader in the game right now. This leader excels when it comes to clearing speed, damage output, and with parts farming. On transformation, Doma gives you a long-lasting 20% auto-heal effect and a water orb skyfall. Both of these effects are important for survivability, but unfortunately, these can be easily interrupted by enemies. Hopefully you can keep these 2 buffs throughout the dungeon, but if that's not possible, you should at the very least want a unit that is able to reapply the water skyfall buff to meet Doma's post-transformation active skill condition. As I mentioned before, Gyokko is the best unit at the moment, for in the near future, this leader will also get access to Laufey. That 50% auto heal is basically essential for these teams in endgame content, as with this leader, you won't be able to reliably match heal combos. Doma's active skill lets you forget about time debuffs and gives a looping 25 billion cap break. So with 2 of these as leaders, you'll be dealing 150 billion damage alone. If you add in the damage from Gyokko and the Giyu duo, then the team will deal around 300 billion damage, provided you change those units sub-attributes. Playing with this team is fairly easy, as all you are required to do to hit 10C is to match a water cross plus some other combo, and if you don't want to deal damage, you could just match a water blob. Being able to choose when to do damage is very handy, especially in the case of needing to stall for a cleric, for example. But depending on the dungeon, Awoken Binds might not even be an issue, since again, with both Giyu's HP buff and Doma's auto heal effect, you might have enough bulk to tank a few hits. One might think that Doma teams will fail to properly perform part break like other mass attack leaders such as Fritz and Solomon, but the team's insane damage output lets you kill all of the new tanky parts either before or alongside the enemy's main body, at least for now. And if there's ever a need for more damage against the parts, you could run the new part bonus attack laden, though usually this 5 billion FUA to parts per laden is not even needed. With Doma's 1.3x parts drop rate boosting leader skill, you will need to fit at least 6 part break awakenings in total to guarantee that even parts with 0% base rates will drop. His own equip is one of the better ones to put in himself, but since you could go with other options like Sanemi's or Dracula and Meduse, you can generally do well with only 1 copy of Doma, since you could just pair with a friend. Finding helpers shouldn't be difficult, as a lot of people will be rolling in Demon Slayer just to chase this leader. So try not to go broke chasing multiple copies of this REM only unit. This rerun brings a lot of new strong units along with some pretty nice buffs to older units that make them viable in the current meta. And if you pay attention to JP tier list, you can tell how impactful this rerun was, as almost a dozen Demon Slayer units can be found listed here. This was GameWith's best leaders list shortly after the JP rerun, and this is the current one after the Kaiju number 8 collab, and as you can see, not much has changed. Though you can't take these lists as gospel, as everything is box dependent, so before chasing any top tier leader, make sure that your box can support them. Thankfully, this rerun allows you to complete multiple teams without the need of units from other collabs or events. So if you invest enough in Demon Slayer, you can walk away with a handful of strong teams capable of tackling the latest dungeons. Doma is considered the top leader for parts farming and in general. There are different team variations out there, but if you want to assemble a strong team, make sure to grab the Giyu and Tanjiro duo via exchange. Giyu and Gyokko are also common Doma swaps, but unlike the duo, you can only obtain them via the REM. Gyokko can soon be replaced by Laufey whenever the Kunho collab arrives. That unit happens to be exchangeable, so fret not if you don't manage to get Gyokko. Even if you do have Gyokko, you will probably still exchange for Laufey since she will give you more pierce uptime than the team that I showed before. Kiriya is a common option when it comes to clerics, so if you didn't get Hyren or the Evo mats for her reincarnation Evo, your Doma team will still work fine. In fact, the team with Kiriya is slightly better since you get more bulk from a 40% shield than from a 1.5x HP buff. You might be concerned that Kiriya is off color and that you can't use his awakenings to recover assist, but that shouldn't be that big of an issue since Doma doesn't care about his attribute and you could always use Gyokko or Luffy to help recover assist. This team usually runs the Demon Slayer collab patch, so that will be another exchange or unit to roll for to complete the team. And even if you would rather use Hyren in your Doma team, you will still want to get Kiriya to enhance the Demon Slayer badge. The added attack boost will definitely help this team and all of the other ones you can assemble from this collab. One of those strong teams is Tanjiro and Nezuko's. That Fire BDP team is fairly accessible if you're swimming in Demon Slayer units. On your side, you only need one copy of the badge unit, but with the arrival of Kaiju number 8 in JP, we have seen that some teams make use of 2 copies in fast farming builds or endgame dungeons. The other teams, Sanemi's, Obanai's, Tengen's, Zenitsu's, Muichiro's, and Zohakutens are a bit harder to assemble since these require mostly REM-only units or units from other events and collabs to shine in endgame content. If you completed any of them, I will stress again the need to get at least one batch unit and one MP unit, as these teams will greatly benefit from the enhanced collab badge. Unfortunately for those that buy bundles, only the Muichiro and Sanemi and Obanai bundles are for sale this time around. I would only get them if you have concrete plans for these units. Both units have really strong equips, but in my opinion, these alone are not worth the $30. To complete some of these teams, you will want to make a couple of exchanges. These can take up a lot of fodder, so I would recommend exchanging once you are done rolling and after getting all of the free rolls, or to only exchange for units that you would be happy getting dupes of. The first priority exchange, if you're playing any team composed of at least 4 Demon Slayer units, is the badge unit Tanjiro and Nezuko. If you're hoping that NA will get Kaiju number 8, then you might even want to get 2 copies. Then, if you're playing Doma teams, I would make sure to pick up at least one Giyu and Tanjiro duo, as this is the go-to absorption voider for those teams. You occasionally see that duo's equip used on Doma teams, but if you're short on fodder, I think you should be more than fine with only one copy. Muichiro and Mitsuri is seldom used as a Doma sub, but I would look into getting at least one copy for their equip alone, as the active skill and awakenings are simply amazing. Then, if you're playing the Tanjiro and Nezuko team, you will want to get 2 Tanjiro and Tengen duos, as that team relies on that duo's HP buff for bulk and to counter absorption shields. Tengen teams can also use this duo, but usually those teams only run one copy. The last 2 exchangeable 9 stars are lower priorities. The Tengen squad is overshadowed by Kiriya when it comes to light clerics, and also its lack of Elka awakenings is a bit of a concern. Their equip is fairly unique, but maybe too gimmicky. Zenitsu and Inosuke do play an important role in the reincarnated Zenitsu team as an orb generation system, so I would only look into them if you really want to play that team. That duo's equip is also fairly unique, but you might not have that many uses for it. Musan sometimes is used in ranking dungeons due to the base form's leader skill, so maybe consider getting one copy if you don't have one already. Also, if you don't have a Rengoku from previous runs and want to play the Tanjiro and Nezuko team, make sure to grab a copy as their base form is a staple in those teams. Gyomei is also an exchange you might want to look into if you have a Sanemi team or other wood teams like Ice or Butler Albrecht who would greatly benefit from having him in a team. Now as for who to purge to make all of these exchanges, I feel that there are too many units you would still want to at least keep a copy of. Though maybe these devils are some units that I would be fine getting rid of as they are easily replaceable. The other 6 stars have gotten interesting buffs or evos, but I think you only need one copy at most. As for the 7-star pool, too many of these units are good in dupes as they make up systems, have great equips, or are key subs in meta teams. I would only exchange some away if you're swimming in copies. I do think Zohakuten, Mitsuri, Kaigaku, and Nakime would be first on the chopping block, but like I said, I would still try to keep one copy. Like always, use your own discretion when making these trades. Overall, I think this rerun has a lot of value and does deserve some rolls, especially since nothing in the near future will be as impactful as this collab. Path Cafe will probably follow Demon Slayer. That in-house will bring back Made Ideal and Butler Kuro, who are still highly rated leaders. Maybe there's some of you that still want to complete those or other Path Cafe teams, so maybe set some stones aside. While Path Cafe is ongoing, we'll probably see a Halloween rerun. We don't have any details yet, as JP and NA get this seasonal around the same time, so no one can really say if you should set aside stones for this event. Usually, Halloween is one of the better seasonals, so maybe budget some stones just in case, though this seasonal should bleed into November, so you'll be able to get some stones from next month's quest. After, we'll see yet again another Gonho collab rerun, which will bring Laufey for Doma teams. In the worst case scenario, if you don't have any fodder, you will have to spend around 70 stones to be able to make this exchange, so keep that in mind. The collab will also bring Niska, who synergizes with Kaigaku. However, this team is hard to assemble without throwing a lot of stones into the REM or without buying any bundles. After the Gonho collab, we might see Kaiju number 8, and this collab will introduce units that help farm endgame dungeons very quickly. This might be enough reason for you to maybe not go crazy in Demon Slayer, but do keep in mind that there's a Kafka team that wants 2 Tanjiros and Nezukos. So for those interested, spending a lot of stones in Demon Slayer may be unavoidable. Since this is a brand new collab, we don't really have any idea whether this will make it to NA, so hedge your expectations. On November 3rd, JP will have a stream where Gonho will most likely announce a new collab or event. Who knows what they'll announce? Maybe we'll get a Chainsaw Man, Spy Family, One Punch Man, or even a My Hero Academia rerun to coincide with these new movies or seasons. Anyway, what are your plans? Let me know in the comments below. And please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Apologies for the slight delay with this review video. Gonho NA surprised me by releasing this collab early in October. I was really expecting that this would come out later in the month or maybe even in November. But honestly, this wasn't a bad surprise, as I was excited to get Doma. I already did some rolls on stream and was lucky enough to assemble the Doma team without spending that many stones. I'm still missing a few duos, so I might decide to roll more for either a chance at them or just to amass fodder. Check it out! Thank you guys for watching, and a special thanks go out to Ages Number 1, Bad Brostick, Breastfeeding Obama, Dark Silencers, Dingo Dante, Eddie Ryan, Hexen, and Wave for supporting the channel. I really appreciate it. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.